And then the light is on, so now. Call the January 4th Heritage Preservation Commission meeting to order. Liz, will you please take roll call?
Yes. Commissioner Davies?
Present.
Welbert?
Present.
Pleiss?
Present.
Mueller?
Here.
And Vice Chair Komen.
Here. That moves us to item 3, adopting the agenda. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the agenda?
Yes.
Would anyone like to make a motion?
So moved.
To accept it. Motion made by Commissioner Mueller. Second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Scott Wilbert. To adopt the agenda, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All ayes, motion carries. That moves us to item 4, visitor presentation. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak about something that is not already on the agenda? Now we move on to item 5, approving the previous HPC minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the November 2nd, 2021 HPC minutes? Would anyone like to make a motion?
So moved.
To accept it? Commissioner Davies? Second?
Second.
Commissioner Mueller? To approve the November 2nd, 2021 HPC minutes, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All ayes, motion carries. That moves us on to item 6, consent agenda. Since there is no consent items, we will move on to item 7, action items. There's a public hearing to approve the site alteration permit for the Conrad Fink House at 322 West First Street.
All right, so I have a presentation I need to bring up here. I'm going to share my screen, so just bear with me for a second. I need capability here. Michelle, can you grant me sharing capability, please? Might just be a moment. There we go. Can everyone hear me okay as well up there? Okay, great. All right, we have a site alteration permit in front of us this evening for specifically the Conrad Fink House, which is located at 322 West First Street in downtown Chaska. So the site is highlighted in blue here on this aerial image. So it's on a corner lot off of First Street West and Elm Street North. The building or home is situated kind of more so on the western side there. The front porch is oriented to First Street West, so that's the area in question this evening. But in terms of a background and history of this property and building, the house was built in 1883 by the local farmer and businessman Conrad Fink, hence the name. He also did own and operate a bung factory on the site as well, which you'll see in a sand-borne paper or map a little bit later. So he was able to work and live on the same parcel of land. When they built the house in 1883, they styled it or designed it off of Italianate style, and it was composed of Chaska brick, so it has significant architectural integrity there. And specific to that, worthy of its historic designation citing, the cubic shape and hip roof of this brick house helped define the structures as an example of Italianate style. Also noticeable are the arched corbelled bricks that top the window openings. So because of the history, the family that lived there, as well as the architectural significance, this building was placed on the local historic resource list for Chaska. And today it is currently owned by Lisa and Norm Oberski, who Lisa is actually a distant family member of the Fink family. So we have a couple Sanborn maps on here. One is from 1911 and the other is from 1924. This is really to just give some historical context, and it's really the best we have in terms of historical imagery of this site itself. We don't have any historical images that showed the building back in kind of the times of when it was initially built, so this is the next best visual or exhibit kind of show its existence and how it was laid out. So the 1911 map shows the home as well as when the factory was on the site. This factory eventually did burn down, but the house still remains. And then in 1924, you can see that difference between the factory on the site and a detached garage being added. But this is significant, showing kind of the same profile and layout that exists today. There is a little bit of a difference in terms of what the front porch is showing. It's hard to tell what exactly was constructed before 1924, in between that 1911 and 1924 timeframe, but Sanborn maps are usually a significant factor in what once was out there. Just want to touch on some of the existing conditions of the porch. Is that showing up on that screen? I don't know why that's, anyways. So the porch itself today is constructed of cobblestone face concrete blocks, which we'll see in an image a little bit later here. I don't know what's happening with my computer. So the main, because it's constructed out of this cobblestone concrete block, it's suffice to say that that wasn't an original type of material that was put on the home. Even though it was put on the home pretty early on, it was more so done in a retrofit fashion, and it wasn't necessarily designed in the same style that the home was. And then the physical condition of the porch itself is also in a deteriorating state. The foundation is sinking, which eventually or subsequently pulls it away from the face of the house itself. So there are images and exhibits to show that the porch is in a bad condition as it exists today. I'm going to try to pull up, I don't know what's going on here. I think I got logged out of the Zoom. That's why it stopped sharing. Bear with me. Apologies on that. Having some internet issues. I think that's why it got pulled off. We'll try here again really quick. But I have some images to show in just a mere moment here if this works, kind of showing those physical conditions of the porch. It's also in your packet too, but for anyone else who's here, I'd like to show that. I think I should be able to log on here again. Sorry, guys. don't know what's happening. Well, I'm just gonna wing it then, and kind of reference towards our packet. But to that end, with the physical conditions of the porch, it's not in a good state to be restored the way that it is. So the other option that the property owners have explored is a complete redesign of the porch itself. I also wanted to note that the location of the porch, in-house for that matter, are within zoning setbacks for the property here, which is not uncommon in downtown, especially with historic properties in the area, designated properties for that matter, because they existed long before setbacks were even a thing. So the porch that was constructed and even the home encroach into that setback. So with any encroachment, it's considered a nonconformity from a zoning standpoint. So if it does get altered or changed, it has to be changed to the effect of not enlarging what's currently out there. So you're not enlarging the nonconformity in essence. So really the approach should be taken where you're trying to lessen the impact of that nonconformity. So that was kind of one of the goals that the property owners were trying to strive for as they were designing the porch or redesigning the porch for this home. So some of the things that they touched on with the redesign of the porch is they strive to go for more of a simplified Italianate style for the porch itself. So something that would be more appropriate and compatible to the style of the home. And one that they believed would be kind of the design that would have been taken had it been constructed originally with the house. So with that, the changes that they're proposing are replacing the roof to be a single-ply roofing material, having all wood construction for the porch itself. They're in between whether it be mahogany or cedar construction, and then that would be painted white to match kind of the accent color that's already existing on the home. In addition, they're also looking at adding ornamental posts and balusters and details within the eave and cornice area to kind of bring in some of those simplified Italianate details that you see on other front porches of that type of design. In addition to that, they are proposing screen panels as a part of the porch to make it more usable. And a way they're doing that is they are painting it to be kind of a darker hue, so it kind of shadows to the rest of the structure itself. So that was intentional to make it more obscure, make it feel and look more like an open porch that's traditional. So there's some helpful images in the packet that show the existing versus the proposed design, and that was done to also give you that understanding of basically how it compares from a scale standpoint, but also a design standpoint, and to show that it's staying within the footprint that's currently out there. So it doesn't trigger any type of zoning regulation because of that. And then you can also start to see the comparison of the weight of the actual structure itself too. So the existing definitely reads more heavy with the concrete block, and then with the new redesign in the wood, it starts to feel lighter, more open, and more compatible with the existing home structure. The materials, again, are of wood and earth tone colors, and there's an image of all the materials that are proposed for that, and some coloring as well. They've also included some renderings, too, to give you different views of how the porch fits in with the home. Getting to the HPC ordinance standards for when we review these, I'm not going to go over all of them, just the ones that are kind of more relevant to the application itself. So I'm going to touch on standard 4A, 4B, and standard D9. As it relates to standard 4A, that relates to the historic and architectural significance of the resource and its relationship to the historical integrity of the surrounding area. So that just touches on what's the significance of the structure. Being that it is a local historic resource, it's constructed of Chaska brick. It has a long time history applicable to that, the family that lived there, as well as the business that used to be in operation. And basically, the renovation to the front porch will bring back an original context that would be more appropriate for that style of home. Regarding 4B, that relates to the general compatibility of the architectural style, arrangement, texture, color, arrangement of color, and materials used on existing and proposed structures with the character of the historic resource and its site or the historic district. The existing porch, the way we see it today, is not what we would consider historically compatible. We would argue that it's non-original due to the construction of the material that was used and not aligning with the Italianate style that is evident on the home itself. So the new design will aid in bringing it back to more of an Italianate style, which is original to the home, as well as provide a more lighter provide a lighter design and not so heavy. So it really kind of allows the house itself and the style of it to be more of a focal point. And then the colors being proposed will stay in line with what's existing out there today, and with new colors, more earth tone hues will be utilized. And then regarding standard D9, new additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction will not destroy historic materials, features, and spatial relationships that characterize the property. The new work will be differentiated from the old and will be compatible with the historic materials, features, size, scale, proportion, and massing to protect the integrity of the property and its environment. So historic materials, features, and spatial relationships will not be destroyed with this proposal. The design is within the same profile and height that exists today, and will be a better fit against the home in terms of a structure standpoint and style standpoint. So our analysis just concludes that the proposed changes will be an improvement out there today, structurally and design-wise, and the changes will provide a design that is more compatible with the Italianate style of the home. So with that, we are asking you to make a motion this evening to approve the site alteration permit for the exterior renovations to the front porch of the Conrad Fink House at 322 West First Street, and then subject to the conditions that are laid out in the staff report. There's two of them. One related to the graphic exhibits, and then one to ensure to get proper building permit approval on any structural work being done. So with that, I am happy to answer any questions. We do have the property owners here, Lisa and Norm Oberski, as well as their consultant, Dan Peterson with U+B Architecture. So they're happy to answer any questions as well.
Would the applicant like to come forward and speak? Anything?
Hello.
Hi.
I guess what we would want to say, first of all, is thank you for the time that you've already devoted to looking at these materials and reflecting on whether or not the approval would be appropriate for our home. As Conrad's great-great-granddaughter, I can assure you that we are wanting to be as true to it as we can, but at the same time, it's always good to have other people look at what should be done and make sure that it is in fact fitting.
And also, thanks so much to Liz and your staff and all the support that we've gotten from the city so far.
Thank you.
Thank you. You can take a seat if you would like. And since this is a public hearing, at this time, we will open it up for a discussion at 7:20 PM. Anyone who is in the audience here for this item can come up and speak at the podium or answer questions. If you come up to speak, please state your name and address for public record. You already did that. Were there any questions from?
I noticed on the materials document that I think that 5 and 6 were reversed, the roof and the white and the black.
I believe it was, yes.
Oh,
I think my only comment on the design is that the front elevation, I think, is more compatible if those large screens are divided in half. I think if you see the front, you have one large screen on each side of the door instead of 2 panels. If you put 2 panels there, you get more of a relationship with the windows on the front elevation. Similar to the side elevations.
My name's Dan Peterson with U+B Architects. My address is 1046 Lombard Avenue, St. Paul, Minnesota. Thank you for your question. The basic thinking, and Liz touched on this during her presentation with the screens, our fundamental understanding is that the original porch very likely did not have any screens at all. It would have been an open porch. So our intent with the design of the new screen system was to basically try and make it recede or disappear so that what really pops out at you, kind of if you squint at it, would have been a more traditional open porch. By adding more stiles and rails across the face of the house, it kind of attracts your eye a little bit more and kind of negates that attempt that we're making. That said, we're in schematic design. We will look at options, and I know those are pretty big screen panels, but we're confident that I know that we have products that work for that, and we'll work with Norm and Lisa and see if they want to have, proceed with more divisions to the panels or not.
Okay.
But that was the general intent, was to try and make those less visually noticeable.
Right. I do notice that the side panels are split, though, right?
They got a little too wide for
Okay.
screen fabric materials. Those were over 8 feet wide, and the ones in the front were less than that.
Right. To me, it gives it more of a contemporary look, the bigger the opening.
Understood. Appreciate your comment.
Yep.
anyone else have anything? Thank you, Steve. At this time, we'll close the public hearing at 7:25. Would anyone like to make a motion at this time?
I would move
To approve?
to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Davies. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Colbert. To approve the site alteration permit for the Conrad Fink House at 322 West First Street, based on the findings and conditions listed in the staff report. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All ayes, motion carries. That moves us on to item number 8, discussion items. The first discussion item, it says discuss Ernst Home and Chaska Yards concept plan. And Liz, would you provide a presentation?
Yes,
Please.
I think I got my,
Got it to work?
I think so. I don't know what's happening over here. Seems to be shutting down on me, but
Thank you for
so
coming.
far it's working. Again. see that. So we have a concept plan in front of you this evening for the S Lot and Ernst home, which is now being dubbed as Chaska Yards for the project being proposed this evening. The applicant is Carver County CDA in partnership with their consultant, McDonald and Mack Architects. So we have both representatives here this evening. The site is located on the screen here on this aerial image, but it encompasses two different lots. One has the existing Ernst home on it, and the other is vacant, which was the former site of the S house. So in terms of some history behind this property that we're speaking to this evening, the Ernst home was relocated back in 2014. It was formerly located where the Fireman's Park project exists today. So in order for that development to occur, the home on the property did have to get moved. And since it was a historic resource at the time, it was significant and imperative to get it relocated within the city. So it did get relocated to more so in downtown off of Walnut Street where it exists today and has been sitting there. And then subsequently, late in 2014, a fire occurred on the S lot, which damaged and caused extreme deterioration to the S house. Which was then demolished in 2017. In between that time, we tried to go after a couple grant processes from the city's level to try to save the home, but it was just too far and too much to try to save from a grant standpoint. There was no way that the city would be able to afford to restore it without having some type of grant money in hand. So it was subsequently demolished after unsuccessful rounds with the state and receiving grants. So since that time, the S lot and the Ernst home have been owned by the city itself, so they have been marketed together to be reused. So both have been sitting vacant since 2014. And then it was back in December of 2018 and then April of 2019 is when you initially saw a concept plan and ultimately a site alteration permit to provide changes to both those properties. And that concept plan and site alteration permit encompassed a project that was proposed by Tyson Talley. They proposed to do 7 residential rental units on both the properties. So 2 of those would have been in the Ernst home, 3 were in a new townhome building, and then 2 were in a carriage house or detached garage type building in the rear. They also did get commentary back from SHPO after those approvals went through. So June of 2019, SHPO did provide some comments related to the project, which is an attachment to your packet. And that's just information that's relevant to the site and kind of how it's been looked at from a SHPO standpoint. So still relevant in some of those comments. Unfortunately, the project did not move forward, and that was probably more so in part to the project not being financially sustainable from what they were proposing and the changes they had to make. In terms of a historical background of both these sites, so 211 Walnut, which is the site of the Ernst house that the Ernst house sits on today. The Ernst house itself was built in 1884 by Andreas Riedeli on the Fireman's Park site. And it has architectural significance due to the fact that it is constructed of Chaska brick and also encompasses a T-plan cross-wing type home, which was pretty traditional for its time. And then the 217 Walnut site is the former location of the S home. The S home was built in 1886 by Joseph S. That was also a Chaska brick home. However, it was eventually covered by stucco, so that wasn't apparent by street view, but had architectural significance due to the brick construction back then. And then again, that was demolished in 2017. So what we're asking this evening, so we're not doing any formal motion on your guys' part. We really just want you to get a firsthand initial look at the project that's being proposed on this site. Eventually, we'll come back for a formal site alteration permit process, but feel that it's always advantageous and helpful to the applicant to receive initial feedback from the HPC on a project of this scale. So that's what we're asking this evening is more so comments, feedback, questions, anything related to the project as you see it today, so that it can better inform them for when they do go through the formal site alteration permit process. So the concept plan that they have in front of us this evening is to redevelop both the S lot and restore the Ernst home at 217 and 211 Walnut Street. Their project would include the incorporation of 4 owner-occupied units, housing units. 1 unit would be in the Ernst home, so that home would effectively get reverted back to a single-family home. And then in addition to that, they would add 3 new individual housing units on the S lot adjacent to the Ernst home. And the intention is to be able to provide kind of these individualized areas with private yards and homes that people can use. And these homes will be situated to be more of an affordable type housing, so it will be for people at the 80% AMI marker or area median income, so it will be able to provide a housing product that would be more affordable for that threshold. In addition to that, they also propose a detached garage and some parking spaces in the rear of the property as well, so that would be able to serve the project itself and the units that are proposed there. This exhibit is showing kind of the existing layout out here for the Ernst house. So the Ernst house is situated more oriented to North Walnut Street there. There's a public parking lot on the south side of the site, and the S lot is currently vacant. Another important point is the alleyway on the back side here. So this is a mid-block alleyway, which has future intentions of being a walkable paseo piece. So it's worth noting kind of how that's going to relate with the proposed project. Wanted to show just some of the existing conditions of the Ernst home today. So this is kind of how it's sitting out there. So obviously, attention and restoration to it will be of utmost importance to ensure its viability moving forward. This is the kind of high-level layout of the project that we're looking at this evening. Also in relation to kind of the future plans out here with the paseo and reconstruction of a public parking lot just to the east of the site, and eventually connecting into that public parking lot that abuts the south end of the site. So the Ernst home is not moving in any manner. It'll stay in the same location and orientation that exists today. The 3 housing units, again, will be oriented more on the S lot side, and then 1 will be oriented more so in line with the Ernst home, and then the front of it facing Walnut Street. There will be 1 with the front of it, or front porch areas kind of oriented on the north side with an additional entry point on the south side there. and then another unit on the west side here with the front oriented to the Paseo, future Paseo area. So the intention is to provide these communal areas, which you'll see in some renderings a little bit later, providing kind of a central community gathering area on both the north and south sides that people can utilize. All these units will have their own private areas, but there will be amenities or shared space that could be utilized by all 4 units. And then the detached garage building is oriented kind of on that southwesterly portion of the site. So there will be 4 covered stalls and then 4 surface stalls, which would provide 2 stalls per unit for this project, which actually meets zoning code. And then there's a couple parking stalls oriented off of the Paseo. This will obviously have more discussion from kind of the planning realm of things, but also kind of how it relates to the Paseo and that piece of it, and how that gets utilized and accessed and relates to kind of the movement and circulation happening out there. Here's more of a defined and zoomed in plan that we just showed there, just to show kind of where these community areas are. So the north area has more of a community patio aspect to it, so people can sit out there and enjoy some shade from the trees that are proposed. And then the south side provides some community garden area and some green space that people can use for whatever purpose they want, like yard games or just gathering. I would say that one of the bigger changes from the Ernst home side of things is the way the home is situated and has been accessed in the past is from the north side off of the front porch there. In an effort to kind of provide more direct circulation for this building to Walnut Street and kind of the overall plan, they show a change on the front here to provide direct access off of the front, or the east side here to provide pedestrian connection into kind of the main artery of this proposal here, which would provide direct access onto Walnut Street. So that's probably the main, more significant change you see on that building. And then that will kind of mimic on the north side here with Unit 1, kind of showing that connection. And again, this main artery is a pedestrian connection all the way through, so that'll provide connection from Walnut Street all the way to the Paseo area. So that's pretty in line with a comment received from SHPO initially that they've been able to address with this layout. And then I'm going to go through a couple renderings here, so if we need to refer back to these for any reason, we certainly can. But just to give some idea of scale and orientation, layout, of kind of all the various pieces of this project. These are the floor plans of the Ernst home as they propose them. I forgot to mention, with all of the units, they do plan to be 2-bedroom units within all of them, including the Ernst home. So relatively unchanged perspectives of how the Ernst home sits today. Obviously, we'll need to work on some details of kind of what's being proposed with the front porch and so forth at a concept level. We typically don't see those details, but certainly as we gear into site alteration permit, we'll need to see more details on those pieces. And then the proposed housing units and their elevations are being shown here. So I started to kind of lay out the standards that we use to review site alteration permits, just pieces to consider as the project continues to move forward. Just 3 of them that I think are relevant to the project itself. I'm not going to get too far into the weeds with that too much right now, just more so kind of what the general comments are from a staff standpoint. I think the spatial relationship that's occurring out there is definitely an improvement of what we've seen before, allows some passageways to happen in between Walnut and the proposed Paseo, so it will definitely provide some level of connectivity in between those mid-blocks, as well as open up and activate kind of what's being planned on the Paseo side. And we'll also touch on some of the comments received from SHPO. And then with the newer individual units that are being proposed, I think the starting intention was to allow it to feel different and contrast with the old or the Ernst home that's out there. However, there's always that element of compatibility and being complementary to the historic district and the Ernst home, the historic Ernst home structure itself. So the way it's being proposed right now, from a staff standpoint, and I get we're at concept, so it's still very high level. It does still feel very contemporary in terms of the overall design. So there are ways for us to continue to work on some of the details of this project to allow it to be more compatible and more complementary to the scale of the Ernst home in the context that you see within the historic district. And some of those pieces that we've kind of iterated in our memo, or in my memo that we sent to you, is looking at some options with the front porch. Is there a way to enlarge in those to make them feel usable and activated to the street side of things? Are there ways to provide some continuity with the Ernst home, like providing the gabled front facade that you see on that home? Are there ways to dress up the cornice area to provide details within that, to provide nods to historic context, looking at window trim or shutters, details within the porch itself? Are there any ornamental things that can happen there to start to bring in those complementary pieces? And then lastly, we've always had a notion on incorporating brick into the newer side, which is not solely something that's required or looked at from a Walnut Street Historic District, but something that we look at from a downtown holistic standpoint, being that we do see downtown as a kind of historic area in general, and with newer construction that occurs in downtown, brick application has been a pretty significant thing we've tried to include in most of our projects. This has been discussed early on in earlier discussions, and the applicant, with the type of project that they are proceeding with, being more of an affordable housing project, the brick application would be cost prohibitive for them. And I guess from our standpoint, if that's the case, there should be more emphasis put on these other details or ways to ramp up the architectural details to, in essence, kind of make up for the no use of brick. So we feel like there's ways to approach this, and there's ways for us to explore and evaluate some options here. So I think that will be kind of the goal of the next step here, is to figure out ways to bring in more of those compatible design pieces. So I guess that's kind of what we're hoping to discuss this evening and get some commentary from the HPC this evening, is to provide feedback on kind of what you're seeing with this plan, more so on the design aspect, how it relates to the Ernst home, but also the Walnut Street Historic District in terms of kind of the overall design, the massing that you're seeing, materials, and so forth. So I'm going to open it up for you guys to discuss. I know we have Todd Grover here with McDonald and Mack Architecture, as well as Elise Durbin with the Carver County CDA. So I know they can help answer questions if you have specific questions for them. And I'm happy to answer questions too. So open it up for you guys.
Is that correct, that these are all two-bedroom units?
No, that,
Do you want to answer that?
yeah, I
Fro-
can. Also, I don't know if at least wanted to. Okay, sorry. Hi. Thank you for taking a look at this tonight and having us talk through these things. Todd Grover, McDonald and Mack Architects. I'm a principal partner at the firm. And to answer, no, they're actually 3-bedroom units. And so the both in the Ernst house and also the new units, they would all be 3-bedroom units. And so the intention is that we're expecting, families to be able to come here, and so providing a little bit, more of that capacity within the houses. So, I don't know if Elise just wanted to mention just a couple things, and then I have a couple things, and maybe we can talk through some of your questions, but I don't know, Elise, go ahead.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Elise Durbin. I'm the Director of Community and Economic Development at the CDA. I just wanted to give a quick moment to talk a little bit about how the CDA got involved with this project. About 2 years ago, Chaska city staff approached the CDA asking us to participate in an affordable housing project on this site after the previous development was not able to move forward. So in 2020, city staff and CDA staff applied for a number of gap financing grants and loans through various housing agencies and obtained that funding. And actually, in December, just a few weeks ago, the Chaska Council and EDA approved a purchase and redevelopment agreement with the CDA to proceed with an affordable housing development on these particular parcels. So right now, we are moving through the planning process. Our hope is to be through that process by May so that we can begin construction in June. As Ms. Hansen mentioned, these affordable housing units will be sold to home buyers at 80% of area median income or less. So for a family of 4, that's about $80,000, to put in a little context. They will remain permanently affordable through a mechanism called a community land trust, which is a program that the CDA runs. So no matter how many future sales occur, they will continue to remain affordable in the community. And our intent with the 3-bedroom units is that families can move into that. As Ms. Hansen mentioned, the cost of materials, not only in the construction, but ultimately the maintenance for these home buyers, because they are not market rate, they are less than market rate, are of concern and things we're noting, but our intent is to meet, city standards and meet the goals of what the city would like to see on this site. So thank you for your time this evening. I look forward to hearing your feedback.
I would just want to add just a couple more things, just a clarity and what we've been looking at. Some of the development, and I think you probably didn't, Liz, did they get the whole packet? Okay.
Yes, we
Well,
did, yeah.
some of the things that we were looking at just with the development of the site were, trying to be compatible with the historic district, but also what was on the site. And so, like Liz had gone through in the previous issue that you had seen tonight, going through the Sanborn maps and trying to be really compatible. So that's really what helped us to develop this concept and some of the density that's on the site. So went through that, but we've also wanted to be very cognizant of the historic district, the new units, the size of the new units in comparison with the Ernst House, but also realizing that SHPO has a very strong role in this, and especially with the financing that's going to be coming through. The SHPO is going to have a review process with that. So we've already actually had 2 conversations with SHPO, who've reviewed both an early concept, but also the concept that the development that we've seen so far tonight. They haven't had a formal review. The formal review will probably come kind of coinciding with the official submittal for this. We're hoping we can get their formal review, their initial one, before, so you can have that as part of your documents that you'll review. But they've looked at this. They've talked about the context and the density there, and really have given us some not necessarily approvals, but recognition that things are moving forward in a good direction. So wanted to share that with you tonight, just because that's a level of review that we still have to go through separate than the HPC. And I know sometimes those things overlap, but I think they layer upon one another. And so it's good to have that. Related to some of the detailing, well, 2 things. One, talk about the Ernst House first. As we mentioned in the packet, really the intention is to bring the Ernst House back to what it was. We've included some of the historic images that we found from the Ernst House, using those to do some of the porch detailing, even looking at the back porch that the earliest pictures we have show it kind of being a shed, the small shed back there. We're going to try to explore that to really try to be compatible and keep the Ernst House as historic as we can, and even with the fact of the porches and the decorative elements that are on the front of the porch, either repairing them if they can or using them to replace if they're too deteriorated. Same thing with the windows, and also trying to bring actually back the floor plan of the historic house and make it compatible for new use and the family. For the units themselves, just a note about some of the articulation for the new units. There's kind of a couple of different things that we're playing with and realizing as a part of this. One is, and I think of this kind of as a Venn diagram, so you have your circle of the historic district. What is compatible for the historic district? What is, for the costs for what this development is. We're going to be soon hopefully working with a contractor to be able to understand what the costs of these, because that's going to be a very important factor in making these as affordable housing units. But then also this idea of long-term durability, maintenance, and kind of have all of these things. Where's that perfect articulation of the houses, the new units? And I think we recognize that we don't want this to be a simplified, these simplified houses. We realize we want to, let's say, I like using the term bringing interest to the house, or articulation. Maybe it's not ornamentation, maybe there's a way that we can look at it, but we've already started looking at the historic district. And one of the things that I found really interesting is that all of the historic buildings that are in the historic district, any of the additions that get put on are much more simplified. So whether or not it be a Main Street building or a house, all of those additions typically have siding on it and typically are simplified. There are exceptions, but those are the main thing. But I think another level that's important to understand within the historic district is we have the historic houses and the historic buildings, and everything that's infill around this, which is what this new development is going to be, it takes a step back from there. And so we're trying to have that compatibility as another kind of circle on that Venn diagram to make sure we don't overpower the Ernst House or be too much, but we need to be compatible. And so we're still trying to work within the detailing, talking about balusters and window trim and things like that. I think, we're still working out what some of those details are, and I think we want to have interest there. It's not just a bland house that we want to make. We want to, especially with the affordable housing, we want to give somebody some value of what the houses that they're living in a historic district, and giving some of that context. So any feedback would be really welcome. But one of the things just that we're very conscious of is trying to understand the detailing that's on the Ernst house, which is somewhat simple. Very, very little detail except for what's on the cornice, or on the cornice that's on the porch. Has some dental work, some columns that once were there now have been removed, and trying to really work within that compatibility, so we're not overpowering the Ernst house. And with our massing and things like that, we've really tried to be conscious of that. So all of the roof lines, the massing of the buildings are shorter than the Ernst house, and so really trying to be considerate neighbors and be compatible with the existing Ernst house, but also within the larger district too. So open to more questions, thoughts, ideas you may have.
Question, I guess, on the commons area. Is that, I guess, maintained by the property owners here? Or would that be like a city-maintained thing? I just think of like, who maintains that common area and things like that?
That's something that we're working out within the agreement. Elise, I don't know if you wanted to talk about that.
It's a little less historical, but I like the concept, but just, people having to share a common area, sometimes that can be a little bit of a challenge, so.
And Lisa can come up here if I say this wrong. But essentially, there's going to be the property owners who purchased this will own the building and be responsible for the maintenance of the houses themselves. And that's one thing, too, we have to be considerate of for the Ernst house, because taking care of a historic house has this other level of it's just, especially the brick, especially being an older house, there's a different level of that. And so that's some of the repairs that we're making to bring it to a stable point, so that when they take that over, they already coming to that level. But the other thing is that so they'll have ownership of the house, but within this larger HOA agreement that Carver County is going to be a part of, there'll be designated areas that each house is going to be responsible for taking care of. And so there's this agreement that we're starting to craft, that the Carver County is starting to craft, in order to establish where those shared areas are, where so that the HOA would take care of those versus some of the private areas, which would then fall onto the owner.
Yeah, there would be some type of HOA. That's what kind of a question on affordable housing, having another fee and stuff like that. But then, and curious, maybe it's a question for Liz, but do these houses then fall into like the conversation we had before? If somebody wanted to do a modification or replace something to those new units, they would have to come to like a committee here and things like that? Or are those, once they're in, they're kind of can be maintained or updated as those new owners would see fit? I don't know how that works. I'm curious.
Yeah, if you want to, sure.
Just from a land trust side, they do need to let the CDA know that they do plan to make any sort of improvements or even maintenance to the home. As I know a question was directed on the historical side of things, but they do have to let us know so that we can make sure that anything that's required of the city is taken care of as well.
Kind of aligned. Okay.
Yeah, and I would say from the city standpoint, much like kind of what we're ultimately going to review here with the site alteration permit, if it's pretty significant changes, then it could trigger the HPC review on it. But if they're minimal changes, they're usually pretty administratively done. So the Ernst home will be a little bit different of an animal in terms of if changes occurred to it, it might trigger more than what the other units would.
Is there, in looking at these, is there any views that show the front of the houses? Because the trees are in the way and all the things that I can see.
Like a side-by-side
Well, yeah, I mean,
comparison?
like the one you have up there, I mean, everything you see here, is there anything that, if you're standing in the commons area and looking at the houses, that, what do they look like in front?
Yeah, I think if you go to the elevation drawings, I think those probably show, if you look in, so that, they all kind of rotate around. So there's a commons front of the house, and then there's an outside front of the house.
So the bottom left one is the front then? I can't,
No, this would be oriented to the commons.
To the commons, so that's,
right, but
So-
that would be the
that's,
front door?
there really, there's kind of two front doors to this.
Okay.
It's a little different concept because we really want to, part of the concept of these houses is this is going to be a little community. And we really see that these four units are going to be sharing space behind, kind of in the center of the site, but also have an outdoor face. And so really those two are both areas where you can enter into the house. And so they'll have, areas where you can place things or storage, there's other things like that. So, but the ones that face towards the commons are the lower left-hand, and then what would be facing outward would be the upper left-hand. But that's kind of the idea is these really are, instead of having a formal front door and a formal back door, they're both entrances that we see people using in different ways depending on how and where it's oriented. But especially on the common side, really having that as an active space, especially with kids wanting to have views and being able to have views out to the commons so parents can be inside, watch. And so that's really what we're trying to design is both the interior and the exterior to have some of those views and
So like on the bottom left one that faces the commons, if you walk through that door,
Yep.
are you on a flat floor or are you going down?
it's essentially if you're walking in there, this is essentially a split level.
Okay.
So you're on the mid-level, so you could go down to, there's two basements and storage, laundry, that's in the lower level, go up to the upper level, kitchen, living room, but then also another bedroom up there.
Okay, and the windows on top,
That would be
that's just an attic with windows in it or something?
no, that's the upper level, and so, so I can't point. I'll go around here. So you would enter in down here,
Yeah.
and so this is the mid-level. So in plan, you would go downstairs, and this would be the lower level for the two basements, and then this would be the upper level living.
All right, but on the top right, that window right on the top,
There is a, it would probably be in, there would be like an attic storage,
Yeah.
or you could have like a lofted
Okay.
storage that's out there. So above the bedroom's not, actually, no, that's the lofted. So it's a vaulted ceiling, so this is the living room that's on this side. So it's a vaulted ceiling that goes up, and so you'll have kind of a story and a half space.
gotcha, okay.
Questions?
Not questions, I guess, when I look at the staff report, I would agree with what I see there. Massing of the buildings and the contemporary nature. Also the comments regarding the garage and maybe changing that massing to be more in tune with the buildings. And probably another request would be, I noticed that there was a yard storage building there, that be incorporated with the garage somehow with their gable roofs or however you do it, but.
So a question for regarding the garage massing. Are you thinking because of the flat roof, or are you thinking breaking it up more? I'm just to give some direction, just because, we're trying to provide for covered spaces or for enclosed space, garage spaces. And it's a tight site. And Liz, if you wanted to go just to the site plan. one of the limitations we have here is, we have the paseo that's along the back here. This is, you're probably all familiar with the site. It's a very difficult site as you go up the hill, and this parking is still there. So we have a really limited area for access for the parking. And so, I guess that's the question I would have is, when we talk about massing, either, is that separating those, because that's going to be difficult, or is it the different roof?
It's more roof, yes.
It's more the roof?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then not wanting to see an outbuilding like that storage shed on the site right away and somehow trying to incorporate that with the
Okay.
garage. But I think the overall massing and the spacing of the buildings and looks like it would work really well.
Great.
How many square feet are the three?
Oh, Amy, do you remember?
Just guess.
It 1,800, I think. They're compact. We're fitting a lot into a small space, and part of that small space was to have it be affordable housing, trying to get to that goal. But also it was, trying to fit these units on the property within the density, requirements or the density kind of the historic site, but also just the size of the new units compared to the Ernst house. And so, trying to play off of all of those. I think it's around 1,800 square feet, maybe a little bit more for each of the units.
How do you control the resale? How does that work?
That's not my expertise.
So these units, like I mentioned, will be community land trust units. So when we take applications for buyers, and when we find an appropriate buyer for the site, we will enter into a ground lease. So what'll happen is we'll sell the building, that'll be one deed. The CDA or the land trust retains ownership of the land underneath, which ultimately makes it affordable. By only selling the building and not the land, that's what makes it affordable. But that is done through a ground lease, and so they are required to pay a small nominal fee every month to us. But that ground lease dictates what they can do on that property as well as the resale value. So at the time that they wish to sell, there is an appraisal done, and there's a formula at which we say, all right, you receive X amount of appreciation based upon what you bought the home for and what the appraisal is now. And so you receive a portion of that, that increase in value. The rest of that increase in value remains with it in order to make sure that it's affordable for the next buyer.
Anyone else?
So we would see this plan again
Correct.
at the final stage for approval or some intermediate stage? Or?
Yeah, typically how we like to order it is, so they'll go through concept plan not only with you guys, but with Planning Commission and Council. So they'll get all of that feedback to kind of take into their next step, which would be preliminary. So typically at preliminary level, we like to bring it back for the site alteration permit because that's when it starts to get cooked up a little bit more. If for any reason between preliminary and final it changes, you might see it again, but typically at that preliminary level, we'll bring it in for formal approval by you guys, so.
And we would see the SHPO review too?
Correct, yep. So it is the goal to receive their comments after they kind of go through concept plan approval. We'll engage SHPO in more of a formal manner to get their comments back to us. So hopefully, by the time you see it in kind of that more formal actionary state, we'll have comments from SHPO at that time.
Okay, and that's all supposed to happen by May?
It's hard to say right now. I think it's totally dependent on their team being able to kind of respond to the comments.
I'll just give and that was part of the reason why we've had these initial conversations with SHPO, is just because wanting them to get them up to speed, essentially as we're developing this and making sure if there are any issues that they see, we're addressing those. And so with, I think the HPC meeting that we're hoping to come back to is in March, is that correct? And so the intention is to deliver the 30% set, essentially, like I said, I had a conversation with them last week, and they had some comments, and taking in some of your comments, to get that into them mid-January here, so in the next couple of weeks. They have a 30-day review, so that should be able to be, that letter, we should be able to get back to them by the time we have our March HPC meeting.
Yeah, that would be very helpful. Thanks.
Yep.
What do you envision the outside of the outside walls looking like in the absence of brick?
Yeah, it will be some sort of lap siding that we'll be using. We're looking at it, and one of the things we've been looking at is in the historic district, how has that been used? Mainly on historic, on older houses, or not necessarily, commercial buildings that both have brick, that have brick on both commercial and residential, but seeing what some of the siding, how that's been handled, and really trying to add some interest, some articulation to that siding, whether or not it's, in the trim, wider trim, even some variation within the trim, or the siding itself, building up of some simple siding or some simple trim decoration. So we're not trying to overpower what the Ernst house has, but it does offer some kind of shadow lines, articulation of the windows, of the balusters, of the siding. So that's really what we're looking at in the next couple of weeks is what we'll starting to develop, so we can I'll have that involved when we send that off to SHPO, and so that they can start to see some of that articulation too. So great.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? No?
I'm good.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your feedback. That moves us on to item number 9, other business.
Thank you.
Liz, would you like to?
Well, you can go around the horn first,
Okay.
before I get to my
Does
stuff.
anybody have any, does each individual commissioner, Commissioner Davies, do you have?
Just
any?
a question on terms. We have a couple people up, I think I'm one of them. How, are they 2 years?
They're 3 years.
3.
Yep.
Okay.
So with any term at your 3-year point, you're up for reappointment. It's structured the same way as Planning Commission, where you have up to three terms that you can serve, so that's up to 9 years. But every term, you're up for reappointment and go through the application process.
So then after the 9 years, then you're off for,
Well, you would be done after your 3 terms. There is an option, to take like a year off. If there is an opening for any reason, you can apply again. There just has to be a separation of those 3 terms, essentially. So we've seen people come back for an additional 3 terms if they want, as long as there's a timing separation between them.
I would be an example. No. I said I would be an example.
Yes, exactly. Steve has served on the commission a couple times here, so.
I have no other business.
no other business?
I'm up for my interview. Either of those 3 years went by really fast. It seems like 2 to me, but
I know. And honestly, it could be 2, but 3 years is typical.
I thought
think.
mine was 2 also, but it must be 3 because
That's what I was wondering.
I'm up 2.
You know, it probably is 2 years. So, no, that sounds more appropriate. It is a 2-year term.
So then it would be 6 years instead of 9.
Correct, yep. I think I'm confusing it with planning
Okay.
commission, so
Okay.
I just
2-year
wait till they
terms.
notify me.
Well, that's what I did too, because I was like,
lock the
I
door,
thought
you
it
can't
was,
get in.
I thought it was 3, but then it was like, no, this seems more like 2.
Yeah, yep,
So,
yep. And those years go fast,
yeah,
for
it could be
sure.
3, we don't know.
Like,
And
We just know
all
we're
I
up.
can say is I am dumb enough not to be able to get on that application.
Well, we changed the way you apply, so I don't know if it was a fluke that day or what was happening, but,
Denise said she couldn't get on either for a
oh,
while.
okay. Yeah, because,
I've tried again, I still can't get on.
okay.
Did you submit?
Well, we can
anything?
always
Were you
go
able
the
to submit
old-fashioned way, so I don't think there's,
Got a piece of paper?
probably.
Well, there was another area that you could go in and you could do it, it's called manually. And so then I just put in information manually, like, like how I would have on a piece of paper,
Okay.
rather than their questions.
Yeah,
So,
it worked for me. I just found it kind of odd. It was kind of like a semi-employment.
it was, yeah.
It asked you some questions that,
I thought it was like, how much do you want to, for your salary? And I'm like, it's paid?
there then.
I think I put 0.
Yeah, I think it was a way to try to kind of consolidate all of the applications into one module versus
Yeah, probably.
separate
That's what I was thinking.
paper
it was,
ones.
too.
We're
Definitely
trying to go
so.
into the future here and make things more efficient.
definitely was not expecting to be a full-time job.
Yeah,
The county commission.
definitely true.
Oh, do you?
Does anyone else have anything? Because that kind of segues well into the other thing that I was hoping to get done tonight. Since Russ has resigned as chair, that provides an opening to the chairperson position. So we would have to make a recommendation to council on who you would like to elect to chair for the HPC. And then as well as the vice chair, if there's any moving pieces on that. So I'd like to give you guys this time to maybe discuss that, and if there is a recommendation, then we can provide that to council at their next meeting, make it official. So we would want a recommendation on chairperson as well as vice chair, so 2 positions there.
So who would like to be chair?
Everybody's looking at me. I mean, I could give it a go if everybody is fine with that.
Good.
No, I'm fine with it.
Leaves the vice chair position available. Would anyone like to take that on?
I'll take it on. I've done it before. I've been there before.
Yes, that's what I.
Appreciate that.
Leave with
Perfect.
experience.
Yes.
Well, that's good that we came to that conclusion. I do believe we should make a motion on our recommendations to
Okay.
council, just to officialize it. I'm pretty sure that's what we need to do. So
Do you want me to ask?
I think it will be just one motion.
Okay.
So ask for a first and a second to recommend Chris as chairperson and then Steve as vice chair.
I would like to make a motion to recommend Commissioner Coman as chair and Commissioner Mueller as vice chair.
Is it appropriate to nominate yourself?
I'm not sure. That's why
We're
I
gonna
was
go with it.
asking,
In the
should
absence of that, I
it?
mean, if
I
that's
don't
going to be
know.
any kind of an issue, I will certainly
Okay,
make the motion.
Could you make the motion,
Yep.
please, for
I
us,
will-
Commissioner
And
Davies?
I will second it.
Okay.
So that was a first
So-
by Davies and a second by Welvert.
There you go.
All ayes?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Perfect.
I know, I was kind of wondering what that too. I was like, I don't know about that?
Oh, I'm glad you guys stepped forward and are willing. That's nice.
I'll get better. I think I have to speak up a little maybe.
No, you're doing just fine. We just have to adjourn now.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
let's make
That's
that
the
official.
next thing on the list.
Oh, do you have something
Bring
else?
up
Yep.
one other thing. We had talked about doing a workshop for the historic district, looking at it, and also increasing the number of historic designated homes.
Yes.
Looking at that possibility.
That is still on my radar. I apologize. We've been having kind of a huge surge of applications come through in the planning realm of things, so I haven't been able to focus on that quite as much. So I'll do my best to get that on the books pretty soon here, but it's on our radar. And I guess the other update too is we will be working towards getting those heritage columns figured out in terms of the images that we want to get out there. So we have kind of started that discussion as well, kind of in the internal side of things. So hopefully we can provide an update on that pretty soon here too. But it is on my radar to get that work session going once things start to slow down, which I don't really see an opening quite yet. So I'm hoping soon we'll be able to do that. So I'll keep you apprised when we have some time set
So
aside for that.
you'll communicate with Lisa directly then at Historic Society?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So she's a part of the discussion on
Yep.
the heritage columns as well as our consultants. So we will get that done hopefully pretty soon here.
Have we had any applicants for the HPC?
We have, actually. I don't know the conclusion of the interviews that have occurred. They've been doing them over the last 2 city council meetings. I believe there's one more where they will have interviews. So until they wrap all of that up, then they'll kind of officialize the new members on all of the commissions. But I do believe we at least got one application, and we might have 1 or 2 people join us. So next meeting, I think we'll have new people in the room, so.
Cool.
Yep.
Yeah, my interview's not till the 24th.
Yes.
Yes, so it is going to be probably the end of the month when we'll figure out when we have new commission members, so, yep.
And you can do it by Zoom.
Yes, you can. We're making
Are
it
you
more
gonna do it by
accessible.
Zoom?
Oh, yeah.
I'm not doing it by Zoom. I was just like, I'm sold, yeah, let's do it in person.
Perfect.
It's nerve-wracking anyway, right? Either way, right?
I've done it a few times.
Yeah, I've done it a couple.
All right.
Should I
should
make
we
a motion
adjourn?
to adjourn?
Yes, would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I will. So moved.
Commissioner Mueller, motion seconded, anyone second? The motion seconded by
I'll second it.
Commissioner Wilbert. We would like to adjourn.